Woo!
Welcome to Night Talks, the University of Florida College of Journalism and Communications talk show produced by students for you. I'm Tanya Fedak, a junior studying journalism, and our guest today is Trimmel Gomes, who is a special correspondent for PBS News Hour and news director for WFSU-FM, as well as a political contributor for WTXL. Trimmel now leads Gomes Media Strategies, offering media outreach, training, and communication services. Hi, Trimmel. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Tanya.
Of course. So before we begin, we do have to address the elephant in the room. So one of your degrees is from FSU, where you're also an adjunct professor. We're here at UF today. Tell me about this betrayal. What made you do this to us? How could you do this?
Well, on the flip side, we are in a place where they groom the best here at the University of Florida.
Right.
So people, when they're looking for the best, they have to hire the best. So I would just say that's why I ended up there. At least they were smart enough to know where to find the best.
You were very selfless for doing that. That's so brave.
Yes,
Thank you.
We're of service.
We are of service. That's the beauty of journalism.
Indeed, yes.
All right, so yes, you did go to UF. You earned your bachelor's degree in telecommunication. So tell me a little bit about those years. Were they foundational in what you ended up doing with your career?
It was the epitome of a foundation. That was the base, the ground start, where we started off and learned everything that we do today. So I got it all here, doing what you are doing right now, learning the ins and outs of hosting and trying to be the best media professional, if you will. And I worked my way up to becoming news director at WFSU, as you mentioned, running the statewide network of Florida Public Radio, and then eventually starting my own company. And it all started here, the foundation.
So after graduation, you began working at WFSU, which was Tallahassee's public media station. You started as a senior producer and reporter. So when you were in this position, what was your beat?
Covering politics. I was hired to cover the legislative session just temporarily. The session is for 2 months in Tallahassee. That's where lawmakers come in and make laws. We watch the sausage process being made. I wish more people would pay attention to what's happening in Tallahassee in the legislature, because that impacts every one of us. Even here in Gainesville, all of the rules and regulations that we follow at home is triggered by what's happening in Tallahassee. Similar to what's happening in Washington, it trickles down. So it's an important foundation. There we go, back to the foundational again. And it enabled me to learn about the political field and ascend and starting my own show, hosting the Rotunda podcast covering politics.
Right, and so, I mean, it clearly worked, and you eventually worked your way up to assignment editor, eventually to news director for WFSU-FM. What were some of your responsibilities in these roles?
Managing the news operation, making sure there was strong editorial control, learning about the community around us, and informing the public of what they needed to know about important things, like, when the mayor is going to meet, when the governor is going to meet, what rules are coming. All of that important information as news director, we disseminate to the public to make sure everyone's informed and know what's going on.
Sounds like it's a lot of pressure. So can I ask, what were some of the challenges that you faced when you were doing this role?
You're fully aware of everything that's going on and you're giving as much information as possible. You don't know a lot, so what you do is rely on your reporters. I had a wonderful team of reporters, of 10 individuals under me, learning and being out in the community. One of my strategies is, like, when they come in for a morning meeting, what's going on in your neighborhood? Tell us about that. Is there anything that I should know or we should know that the public should be aware of? And that was a good way of getting in good nuggets and learning stuff that we could pass on and really cover.
So I'm a reporter for Gainesville. I do WFT and the alligator kind of stuff. But I think reporting in Gainesville is a bit different than reporting in the state's capital, Tallahassee. So compared to your time in Gainesville to Tallahassee, did you notice that there were some differences in the market?
It may seem different, but the foundation is pretty much the same.
Okay.
We have leaders in the community that are in charge of keeping the status quo, making sure everyone's safe, everyone's informed of what's going on. So you just take what we're doing here in Gainesville to Tallahassee, and it's at a different level. You have more of the statewide operations, state agencies, you have the governor and the legislative bodies. So it's the same process of covering your local city commission meeting here in Gainesville. That's the nice part of being a legislative state house reporter. You just rinse and repeat, and you have different players doing similar roles. So your foundational role is just like, to inform the public, be there, report on what's going on. So it's really, as much as it's different as far as, you have the Seminoles to deal with. The games here are a lot better.
Yep.
But as far as informing the public, what you learn here, you apply it everywhere around the world even.
So can I ask, was there more pressure working in Tallahassee because it's the capital? I'm sure news is a bit bigger when you're dealing with some of those figures.
Yes, it was intimidating at first. Being around, going to the State House and walking around the halls of power, these are very important people who control the state and what we do and how we do it. So it was very intimidating at first, but once you jump in, your first week, your second week becomes easier, your month, then years, and then you're just running around owning things. So you just gotta own it.
Gotta own it. That's good advice. So to pivot just a little bit, in 2013, you went to work for Satch's Media Group. You were a news director of digital media properties. So this is a bit different than, reporting. What led to this change, and what were some of the things that you did in this role?
I was given the opportunity, I was recruited into a role of going to the other side of doing public relations. Just doing the work that I have done, being known in the community, someone said, hey, we would like to hire you. And I was like, okay, I'll listen. You're going to offer me more money? Why not?
Right?
So I thought long and hard about the opportunity, and I decided it was time for a change. And I went into the route of doing public relations, which is the other side of what we do, which is cover the news. Now you're particularly working for an entity promoting their brand, their information, and getting it out to the public. So I did that for a while, and it led to new doors of me being able to run my own consultancy, doing the same thing that I was doing for that company. So it was a leap of faith that I am glad that I took. I took a risk on myself and tried something new, and my former boss became my first client. And that was very rare to have that kind of support, and encouraged me to start Gomes Media Strategies, where I was able to start getting my own clients, doing their social media work, financial services firms, banking firms, healthcare, and it's been quite an experience and journey that I'm still on today and enjoying it.
In 2014, you became a political contributor for WTXL ABC 27 in Tallahassee. So a little bit of a shift from Satch's, but how is this commercial station and your role there? Was it different than some of the things you've done in the past?
It was different because now, instead of just reporting on the news, I was being interviewed for my knowledge of politics, my knowledge of the people at the Capitol, and giving insight into their motivation as to why they were making certain decisions. So I had that insight from being behind the scenes and knowing some of the players. So it was an opportunity for me to pass along my expertise, my years of covering politics in Tallahassee. Now I've been seen as a noted expert, so I can explain what's going on, why it's happening, why it's important. You should look at this instead of that. So it was a nice, interesting role to be called upon when there's any big political news happening, and for them to find out, like, hey, what does this mean? Can you explain that to our audience? So it was a more different format to be able to sit and provide that information and give a little bit of opinion in addition to the facts.
And what was that like being on the other side of the interview process after being the interviewer for so long?
It's nerve-wracking. It's like, I'm sitting here being interviewed. I'm like, I don't know what questions coming next. So you have to think on the spot, and process, and it's fun. It allows me to have a 360-degree view of this wonderful, interesting process of communications, this wonderful field that's constantly changing.
Yes, and then in this field, you worked for a variety of different stations, different news outlets. So when you were doing this kind of thing, did you get to choose your own stories, your beat? How were they chosen? Can you give me a little behind the scenes look on that?
There was a lot of power of being able to choose what's going on. My mornings would start with reading and seeing what is going on out there in the news, what's happening globally, what's happening in other states, what's happening statewide, what's happening in other cities, and then coming down to our community, having that team meeting with everyone, and from the janitor to the people on the street, like talking to people to find out what's going on in their lives and what should other people be aware of, and then passing that along to making those decisions as to what we would actually cover for our audience. So it's not necessarily just from my own thoughts, it's like aggregating all of this to really come to a smart decision of what our audience needed to know that week, that day, that second.
You worked for a public media station. How is that? Are there any differences between that and some of those commercial aspects?
Yeah, commercial radio in particular, it's a lot faster pace. Whereas public media, it's a more slower pace where it's more about the understanding and it gives more of the context, the reasoning behind. In commercial radio, you would hear a story in like 20 seconds, whereas in public media, you would have 45 seconds. You have more time to get the context, the meat, the understanding of what's happening behind that decision. So that's a good way of describing the difference in public media and commercial media. Public media is more about educating the public, and like that's why you have programs like Sesame Street and PBS, and it's of service to the community, and that's why funding public media is important. Back to those underwriting credits, please support WUFT and everything like that, and that's why we have to continue those programmings into the future so other people, the next generation, can have access as well.
You were an adjunct professor at FSU. What inspired you after all that time reporting to return to academia?
Passing along that knowledge and realizing that I have an experience that can be translated into the academic world. Oftentimes people don't have the practical experience of being in a newsroom, being interviewed and being the interviewer. I was able to translate that real world experience and bring that to the classroom in real time and say, hey, this project that we're working on, you're going to be able to hear that on the airwaves tomorrow. So this is what actually happens in a newsroom. So it was giving those students a real hands-on experience from someone who's in the business currently. And you find that a lot in our industry, especially here at the university, where you have experts who are doing multiple jobs, where they're working maybe at WCJB, or they're producing at the Today Show in New York, and they may take on an adjuncting stint of teaching a course and give students the opportunity to hear the insight from a real world experience.
2014, you launched Gomes Media Strategies, and this is providing media outreach. So how do you help your clients? What services do you offer? Anything about that?
Yeah, I give them the knowledge that I have regarding what would be the best way to capture everyone's attention, what's best for their brand, how to do crisis management, from public relations services, social media management, crisis management. Those are the services that I provide. So if, for example, if you are a company and you want to make sure that your brand is always seen in the best light, that's where I come in. I recommend you hire me, not when the disaster strikes, but well before. Oftentimes you get called upon when it's sort of too late. Your name is already being blasted all over the news. You posted some bad social media post and then you're calling me in to clean it up. Whereas you can have me on deck well in advance and you won't ever have that issue going in. So those are some of the services that I provide. I try to be preemptive to keep them out of trouble in the first place. But once you're in trouble, I even come in and do some quick damage control and cleaning up.
And how does that make you feel knowing that you're able to really assist these kind of brands, especially when they're at their lowest with some of the crisis? Does it ever feel rewarding?
It's rewarding. It's rewarding, especially for good causes, which I gravitate to. It's making sure that information, regardless of what you're doing, is accurate, truthful, and it's out there for the public. And it's helpful information. We all want to know what to do. I'm a big avid traveler, like making sure your website has basic information of the who, what, when, where, why. Because when we're in a new city, for instance, you're searching, maybe looking up what to do and all of that stuff. Making sure a brand is reachable, accessible, people can communicate with you, and you're very responsive. Those are tips that I pass along to people. Make sure you have a contact information. How do we reach you? You want to have this big messaging out there, but there's no way for us to get that feedback and hear from your audience. So there are basic tips that I provide along to clients that help them, and in turns help us as consumers, because I'm always looking out for us.
Exactly. And so with Gomes Media Strategies, that's not the only thing you founded. You also founded your own podcast, right? The Rotunda.
I started mine when no one else had, the market was very slim with podcasting. I would walk around and trying to convince someone to sponsor my podcast, and they're like, "What's a podcast? How do I find it?" And I'm trying to grab their phone and show them how it works. Now go back to those same people later, and they're like, "Oh, even I have a podcast." But the Rotunda podcast, it's about the people and issues shaping Florida politics, a nonpartisan program. So it was an opportunity for me to sit down, just like we're doing today, and talk to people of influence, people who are in position of leadership, from the governor to the Senate president, and interview them about what is important, get behind the headlines, give them an opportunity to talk even more beyond the 10-second soundbite, and have a conversation about what's going on around in politics. Why did they make that decision? Talk to the people who is being impacted by that decision, and just have that discussion forum where people can pull up their phone and listen at their convenience when they're driving in the car or mowing the lawn, and they can listen to the Rotunda and hear from the people shaping the state of Florida.
You started it when not a lot of podcasts are out. Now everyone and their mother has a podcast. Is there anything that you're doing that makes yours kind of stand out and give it a unique angle to draw in viewers?
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. It's the best than all of them.
There we go.
But it's making it nice, quick, and straight to the point. You get more of hearing from these people making decisions, whether it's a congressman, a senator, or a statewide elected official. You get to hear them, and it's a fast-paced format where you sit down with them and they get behind the scenes, they explain a little bit more. I add in some more music and production to make it easy to listen to. I try to keep it under 20 minutes for an episode, so in and out. You can listen to it on your commute to work, and you got your fill of what's happening, and you're ready for the next episode. So I think that's what keeps people coming back, as we're all fragmented with so many things trying to grab our attention. You just want the most quick information in the most digestible form, and people like to binge too, so I like to do that when I'm watching Netflix and stuff.
Same.
I wait until I have a few, so I don't have to wait for the next.
Looking back at your career with the Rotunda, with Gomes, with all the reporting that you did, is there one story that you've done that stands out to you more than the rest?
I enjoy all of the stories that I've done, but there've been several impactful ones. One for the Rotunda that I've done that it's been my own production was a trip to Cuba that I made. It's not easy to get to Cuba. No. So the journalist in me was wow, I'm here, let's take advantage of this opportunity and interview some of the people that I came across, producing that when I came back, and also being careful not to cross any lines and become a diplomatic crisis of being caught over there for doing something against the government or something like that. So I interviewed just people who were willing to talk, to share their real world life experiences about life in Cuba. This was at a time when they were opening the border for tourism and to get more Americans to visit. And I wanted to see, and not just see what we're being able to see, the nice fancy hotels and all of that stuff, but hear from the locals. And they provided some very revealing information about things are not what it seems. You know, the infrastructure is not really there. And hearing that perspective from the locals was something I was proud of being able to produce and share it on the podcast so people can hear from the streets of Cuba.
Yeah, and so one thing I noticed as a reporter is that when you're doing some of that on the street reporting, it's sometimes difficult to get people to talk to you, but you amplify that to Cuba, and I'm sure it was much more difficult. So, I mean, do you have any advice on how to do that? Especially, you've probably done the most challenging.
Yeah. It's about building trust and explaining to the person who may be reluctant to speak, giving them a moment to process what they're being asked to do. The person may say no to an interview request, you coming up to them on the street and being like, okay, because they're startled. They're like, oh, who's this person? What do they want? I would give them a moment to think about it, even if they say no right away, and then walk away, let them be, and then revisit. Say, hey, I have another question. Just really want to explain why I'm here and why it's important to have your story, and explain that to them. Let them see why you're doing, because it's a lot of confusion and people just really need some time to process. And if they say no, then, but oftentimes they are really getting a chance to hear from you, the reason behind your request, and then oftentimes they may switch their mind. So that's a technique that I've used over the years, and it's always worked for me.
And that's a really important story that you told about Cuba. And that's what I think is so beautiful about journalism, is that we're given that platform to tell people's stories. And I'm wondering, because journalism is such a pivotal role in, I think, everyday life, but looking back at the first day that you started as a journalist to now in 2024, how have you seen the role of journalism change?
It has changed in a major way. We're no longer just sitting from the 3 or 4 major broadcast networks. People are not sitting at home watching the 6:30 evening news. They're getting their information on their phone. They're getting their information throughout the entire day. And they're getting information from sources that may look like news, but are not news. They don't have the same structure, ethics, and values, and just those rigid things that you can rely on, that both sides are being told, that they're not being influenced by a sponsor or a political figure. Those are so many things in question. People are not sure between what's an opinion show and what's an actual news show. So there's a lot of confusion out there, and there needs to be more education in that vein of letting people understand what is actual news and what's opinion. Any and everyone is just reporting today. You have your phone, people go live on their TikToks, on their Instagram and Facebook Lives, and you have that powerful tool which gives you the opportunity to just start speaking and people will listen. And being able to speak and being the loudest doesn't mean that you are the one that's most informed. And we are seeing that a lot, where a lot of people are getting bad information, misinformation, and it's just snowballing. By the end of hearing that bad misinformation, by the time it gets down to the end, the damage is already done. How do we roll that back? How do we change that? And that's the crisis that we're currently in, that we all need to figure out. This is why we need more of you. And this is why we are so grateful for the University of Florida College of Journalism to be able to train the next generation in preparing and helping people understand where to find the truth, how to be better informed, and how to be better humans and citizens of this world.
And so that aspect of, fake news and misinformation that you mentioned, is that something that you're dealing with at Gomes Media Strategies right now?
Yes, and I would argue that we're all dealing with it in our daily lives. One of the things that I do, even for clients, is making sure information is accurate. What if your words are being twisted? What if generative AI is someone slaps your photo or your logo on something and puts a different caption or sends out a tweet in your name that's not something that you would actually represent. Misinformation, disinformation, intentional by mistake, all of that is happening in real time, especially in politics. And you have even the influence of foreign entities influencing our political discourse here in the United States. So those are serious issues that are too big even for me to do on my own. So this is why it's important that we all pay attention and find ways to be better informed and know how to gravitate to the most accurate, trusted sources. And I would say WUFT Night Talks is one of them.
I would say so too, personally, unbiased, I would say so too. So keeping all of this in mind and just reflecting on all that you've done, what advice would you give to young journalists who are just getting started?
Stay the course, learn as much as you possibly can. The business is changing, it's evolving constantly. From the days I was here, so much has advanced from technology. Soon you'll be doing everything on your phones, as we all are now. We won't need a lot of equipment, so just stay at the cutting edge. See what's coming, what's trending, and try and think like an entrepreneur and learn everything you can. When you have or secure your first job, don't just focus on your job. Go into the other departments within your organization and really have a genuine interest in what they're doing, how they're doing it, because in the end of the day, it comes down to community. We all need to rely on each other to be better versions of ourselves and be successful and go into the future, and just do your best. And it's okay, and you'll fail and you might get fired, but there are other jobs out there. Get up, brush it off, and keep moving forward.
Exactly. Well, that's all that I had for you today. It was so fun getting to chat with you, and I really do feel empowered now as a young journalist. I think hearing your story and all the successes, I realize how important the role of journalism is. So thank you for this beautiful reminder, and thank you for our viewers for joining us. Until next time, good night.